Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm asking the question, should online platforms and their apps ban political speech entirely? And so to get this out of the way before we dive into what's going on, my answer, quite frankly, is no. Political speech of any kind should not be banned, and I'll dive into that in a bit. But first, I want to let you know what's going on, and I think it'll be interesting to see who responds to this video saying, well, no, they absolutely shouldn't, Nick, you're an idiot. I get that quite a bit, but this will be interesting, and here's what's going on. Tinder users are getting banned after showing support for Black Lives Matter. This is according to an article by Mashable. Now, the example that they use is that a Tinder user in Utah, Jade Goulart, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, decided to recently use her account to support Black Lives Matter. And so she added a petition for justice for Breonna Taylor and all of that. And then a week later or so, when she did that, she couldn't sign in. Twitter had banned her. Now, Twitter had come out and said that they were originally banning accounts for promoting Black Lives Matter because it was against the promotional purposes part of their terms and conditions. And so basically that got her banned. And I think that's very interesting. But after an online backlash, Tinder reversed that policy. And to quote Tinder, we have voiced our support for the Black Lives Matter movement and want our platform to be a place where members can do the same. Users claim, however, that Tinder is still punishing them for their support of Black Lives Matter. Goulart, for example, wasn't banned until June 24th. This is well after Tinder's June 7th expression of support for Black Lives Matter, and after she contacted Tinder multiple times, the support team claimed that it didn't have an account associated with their email address, although obviously she had an account, there were screenshots and all of that, but she isn't alone. There are people that have been complaining about Tinder on Twitter and Reddit, specifically as it regards to Black Lives Matter. So this is something that we're going to see as it unfolds what Tinder is going to do here. And so we'll move on because the next one is our favorite privacy violating and conspiracy theory spreading platform, and that is Facebook. Now, this is the exact opposite of Tinder in that basically they have an anything goes policy except for stuff that is outright criminal. Now, a report released this past Wednesday by civil rights auditors warned that Facebook's failure to rein in toxic speech, racism, and misinformation could have serious repercussions on the presidential election and may even suppress voter turnout. This is according to USA Today, who's reporting on this, as well as many others. Now, the report is the result of a years-long internal civil rights audit of Facebook's policies and practices and took particular exception with the company's decision not to take down any, and I quote, inflammatory rhetoric and false claims from President Donald Trump. And to quote the person who wrote this, the report or the audit, Laura Murphy, and I quote, the prioritization of free expression over all other values, such as equality and non-discrimination, is deeply troubling. And so there we go. This audit began in 2018 at the urging of civil rights organizations, and this report was also prepared by the law firm of Relman Colfax and calls for Facebook to more rigorously and consistently enforce its voter suppression policies and to bring experienced civil rights executives to guide policies and vet products. And Facebook said this past Tuesday that is in the process of hiring a civil rights vice president who will then be the company's chief legal officer as well. Criticism, obviously, of Facebook has intensified due to the nationwide protest over George Floyd and all of that, but Facebook maintains that it is making strides in identifying and removing misinformation, other harmful and divisive content. They first and recently fact-checked President Trump as well as Twitter in that vein. So maybe Facebook is pushing on this due to societal pressure. But here are my thoughts on this. Those are the facts on the ground. Here are my thoughts. Now, as I mentioned, I am all for free speech, including political speech and even speech that I'm personally not a fan of. It's obviously it's not fun being called an idiot or a loser or a shill for a political agenda or a liar online, which does happen to me from time to time due to videos like this, and this is anywhere from sites like YouTube as well as more fringe sites that replicates my video or my audio from YouTube or SoundCloud and all of that. But I will say this, as much as I am for free speech, free speech has some caveats as well that I don't think we necessarily think about or understand. Free speech is not consequence-free speech. Societal disdain for certain types of information is a consequence of using speech that society finds distasteful. Now, I'm not talking about uncomfortable speeches or discussions like that. So, for example, if there is a controversial subject where we have two opposing sides, I think having an honest and open and respectful, that's the key word, conversation on tough topics is helpful in understanding the perspectives of everybody and hopefully working towards an acceptable outcome as well. If we cannot have these tough conversations, I think that is very much a detriment to society, because even though whatever's in the zeitgeist, there's going to be an opposing faction to that, and I think there needs to be an open and honest dialogue with that. My second point here is that the intent to mislead and deceive a population of any size with demonstrably false information isn't the equivalent of free speech. You may have the right to believe and say whatever you wish, and in that vein, that falls under free speech. But again, it comes down to consequences. And my third point here, which I'm about to make, and my third point is, I really do believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. I'd rather have everything be as transparent as possible so that anyone can look at what I basically will call, and I'll call it nicely, alternative facts and prove them wrong. But, and this is a big but here, that basically requires, if we are going to have that requires everybody to actually educate themselves and read. Studies show worldwide that people basically see a headline and assume they know what's going on. And there's going to be a group of people that are going to see the title of this podcast or this video and say, oh, well, he wants to crush free speech, when I've literally explained why I don't want to here and also what's going on. And they will respond to me in kind, calling me an idiot or whatever they decide to do. Now, few people take time to actually read both sides, or if the facts are involved, read what the data scientists or the researchers or whoever created the information has to say. I see this quite a bit when somebody posts an article about, let's say, the good or bad that, President Trump does, for example, and if it's bad, you see a whole slew of people defending what is something that might be just demonstrably verifiable, and vice versa. So it's a huge, huge problem here, and this is why we get things like Pizzagate or Jade Helm or the Internet Research Agency in the 2016 election and all of that. And so by virtue of this, I'm happy with the move that I'm seeing with Twitter and Facebook and others to fact check questionable posts, not necessarily slow them down. So for example, when Twitter fact-checked President Trump, they didn't actually quash his free speech. He could say whatever he wanted. They didn't even restrict that message being spread to his tens of millions of users and beyond. Everybody saw everything else, but now there's a fact check that says, hey, let's get two sides of the story here. I think that's a pretty good thing. I would rather expose people to all sides, and hopefully they will read up on it and make a better and more informed decision with that information. If it gives anybody pause, or a group of people pause to say, well, wait a second, that's counter to what I know or what I think or what I believe, let me read more on that, then I think that helps really proliferate, I think, really good information out there, get that critical thinking moving. And my final point on this is that these are also privately held companies and can do what they want. So for example, if I own a company and I happen to own a company, then, I have the ability to, let's say, restrict, my employees from saying things or doing things in front of customers that may not necessarily be appropriate. So for example, if I said, hey, guys, let's refrain from, political talk when we're in front of customers or talking to customers, that might be something because, I think our job is agnostic to politics as well, in the same way that I say, hey, you can't walk in, without shoes and a shirt, no shoes, no shirt, no service, that kind of thing. So I think that that's an important thing to understand, but what's going to ultimately end up happening here is if a Facebook or Twitter says, you know what, we're going to fact check anything, and if we are finding this, or our censors or our researchers are finding this as demonstrably false, so we're going to kill that Facebook group, or we're going to kill that Twitter feed, or whatever that is, we're going to see how the market handles that, because users will find an alternative. And in the same way that a lot of users left YouTube due to, let's say, what they perceived as censorship or whatever it is, and I'm not getting into that debate because I don't know enough about it to say it was or was not censorship, but YouTube did see a whole exodus of people that decided to go to alternative platforms, not nearly as big as YouTube, but where they can do whatever they want. And so by virtue of that, I think that's something that we will see happen, with a Twitter or a Facebook. And there are already alternatives to them that people are moving to that let's say cater to one political side or the other, where I think in this sense, we should be having those open, honest, and really uncomfortable conversations in a respectful way. So that is your news of the day. I'd be curious to know what you guys think. And here we are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, where hopefully I'm not censored in any way, shape, or form. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well, where I'm also hoping I'm not censored. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.